I'm Summer Falgiano, and you're tuned in to Badasses in Tech. This week, we're joined by Samir Vasavada, tech co-founder and CEO. He's here to explain the importance of self-investment and why confidence is key to business leadership.
We're essentially applying artificial intelligence to wealth management. So if you think a lot about what a financial advisor does right now, it's mostly focused on relationship management with their clients and, acquiring new assets and, advising their clients in their current financial state. But there's a lot of back office work that advisors are spending, hundreds of hours doing that is, time consuming, hard, and can completely be automated. So we've essentially built an AI where we can analyze a client's investment needs, build them customized portfolios around their unique criteria, provide the tools to manage it, and then kind of intelligence where we can provide unique insights. So the advisor can look smarter to clients and also have a lot of what they were doing manually automated. So they can focus on what they care about, building relationships with their clients, growing their practice.
Wow. How did you get started? That is I feel like a very complex thing. What got you so interested in that?
It is complex, for sure. I think we stumbled into it almost.
Okay.
So, my co-founder and I had a background with AI research, and we were consulting with a few bulge bracket banks and large banks like Mass Mutual and RBC Royal on how AI will integrate into financial services. And we just kept on noticing this trend where, there wasn't that much technology existing. There was a lot of hype around it, and there was a lot of potential use cases, but no one was actually doing anything. And we saw this as kind of the golden opportunity to fit into a space. And then we realized was, yes, there's more talent and resources in these big, institutional, big corporations. But where a lot of the market is and where a lot of the opportunity is, where there's really nothing, even in terms of more legacy technology and older technology, is your independent financial advisor. So we saw this as an opportunity of let's go for the little guy and try and help them out with technology, and we'll go upstream into the bigger players. But this is an opportunity to help out small businesses and businesses that haven't had access to this type of technology.
Okay. Could you give an example of how, what type of small business, or without having to go into names or anything?
Yeah, so for example, a Bob Jones Financial, if that makes sense. So if you decide to become a financial advisor today, and you have a couple friends that have a lot of money that you want to give your advice on how they should be managing their finances better, that's the type of ideal customer we're going for. So smaller shops, so anywhere from one advisor all the way to 30 or 40 advisors, depending on how big they are and how much in assets they're managing.
Okay. Wow. So before we were talking, we were kind of saying how important it is to know about where to put your money, and there's so much. Everything that you just talked about, I know it's very important. It's not something that the everyday person knows about or even can navigate. How would you encourage somebody who really is wanting to invest, really interested in this market that we're in? How would you encourage them to at least get started?
For sure. So I think the best, and before all else, I always say invest in yourself.
Okay.
But after that, after you've kind of built the credentials you really need to succeed, I would say, impose a tax on yourself, right? That you're going to set aside that money and put it into a separate investment account that you can't touch, that you're going to eventually retire with, and use that as your kind of base, right? Okay. So if the government put a 20% tax on you, there's nothing you can really do about it, right? You kind of have to pay it. So you should do the same exact thing, but with the whole intention of, this money is going to be devoted for, retiring with in the future. So, because I think too many people realize this too late. I mean, the majority of Americans have less than $70,000 in retirement savings, I believe, when they should have around $900,000. So, imposing a tax on yourself early on in life when you're a college student or older is really important in order to kind of get a savings from investments. And I think the other thing is a lot of people try and take these really risky investments, this kind of get rich quick philosophy. And the truth is that doesn't really work. You can have a few big wins, and but over time it's proven that if you just invest in the market, you're going to outperform any kind of big investment or big risk investments.
Okay.
So just sticking with safe, conservative investment vehicles and really optimizing for the long term, not trying to make money quickly.
I like to hear that, because that's kind of what you said before. It isn't the common piece of advice. A lot of people say, oh, go risky, or put all of your eggs in all these different baskets. But it's nice to hear that maybe sometimes playing it safe, or kind of keeping within the swim lanes that you're comfortable with.
Exactly.
Actually
That's a good analogy.
Well, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. So when you're dealing with, you were mentioned all of these very highfalutin banks. How do you get courage to walk into those settings and speak to these very intimidating, in my opinion, businesses and companies?
I think it's a big confidence game, right?
Yeah.
If you've got confidence and conviction, people will believe in you. You'll believe in yourself, and anyone's really capable of anything. It's really just believing in that at its core, right? We're able to learn all of this stuff, and we're in this society now where you can go on the internet and learn anything you want, right? And we decided this is what we want to learn. Here are the people that we want to be connected with, and we went out and did that, and we just kept on iterating and kept on trying to advance ourselves until we finally got there. And I think it's the other thing is you got to be okay with making mistakes, right? We just kept on making mistakes over and over again, but through this whole mistake iteration process, we started to succeed, and we started to iron out our previous failures to new successes.
Can you give me an example of one of the biggest challenges or one of the biggest mistakes that?
I mean, it starts as simple with your email, right? Okay. So my emails before used to just not be too professional, and I was just throwing out a bunch of ideas, and I would lack structure to them. But as I started to improve my emails, it's a small thing, I noticed that I was getting better as a whole, or how you communicate with people, right? There's a certain way in which you're supposed to communicate with people from a maturity standpoint, and from all kinds of different directions that you'll start to improve with as time. And I think there's all kinds of different things that you're going to slowly start to pick up on as you just start doing them, of how other people are doing them effectively and how they're not, and how to learn from that as well. So the more and more you do something, the better and better you'll get at it, as long as you've got this whole open-mindedness and eye for iteration.
I love eye for iteration. I like that. Yeah, and I think too that's important to touch on. A lot of what people are learning in school, or a lot of what we're kind of told to really focus on, is hard skills. Be really good in math, or be really good in science. But maybe there is more emphasis that needs to be put on those soft skills.
Oh, exactly. Soft skills are incredibly important, right? To know how to develop relationships, or to know how to conduct themselves, which is something that people somewhat have to learn on their own, but there is some kind of guide that schools could provide, but they're not currently doing that, right? So, recognizing that you're not going to learn everything in school, and just because you get good grades means that you're going to be successful. Well, it doesn't mean that you're going to be successful. So, you kind of got to figure it out on your own, and realize that that's not the case, and teach it to yourself.
Yeah. I wish that they taught all of what you're doing and what you're speaking to me about in school. They don't have anything like that, as far as I know about. So you learned everything through Google? Is that what you're saying, or?
I mean, through a wide variety of different ways, right? So, from the internet, of course, right? But, a lot of it I just learned by doing and talking to people, right? The one thing I made sure to do with myself is surround myself by, experts in each aspect of the field, right? So for our team, right? We've got a lot of PhD engineers and researchers that we work with, and their 20 years of experience becomes our 20 years of experience, right? So, I like to say, I don't have my own 10 years of experience, but I'm using someone else's 10 years of experience, and that's why I know it works, right? So, surrounding yourself by people that have done it and have a lot of experience and also believe in you is incredibly important if you're trying to, grow and learn and iterate.
Do you feel like you have had different challenges, or you've experienced different biases because you are young and you're successful?
Not really. I mean, I have experienced some for sure, but I think it's just kind of powering through it and realizing it doesn't really matter. Because at the end of the day, age is just a number. If you believe in yourself enough, then you can kind of do whatever you'd like. right? I think that it's actually been an advantage in some ways, whereas, certain people see you as like, if he's doing this at this age, what's he going to be doing at 30? Right? But I think in financial services and these more mature industries, I think it also can be construed as a threat, right? So I think a lot of people can be threatened by it, but it's just making your way through it. And it's also by surrounding yourself, as I said, with the right people that are in the right position to support yourself.
I'm sensing I always think in threes. I'm sensing a little formula of success. Surround yourself with people that are supportive of you. Be confident. What would you say is the third one?
I call it relentless resourcefulness, right? So it means that you're not going to quit until you've got your end game, but you're also going to be resourceful in how you do that, right? You're going to bring together the right resources with you, but you're going to, you're not necessarily you're almost being frugal, if I could put it like that, right? I think a lot of the time, we did all of this and we made all this headway, just pushing forward as hard as we can, and eventually things fell to place, right? And this whole idea of grit and not giving up. And if you want to take the easy way out and spend your way through a situation, or complain oh, I don't have this money, or I don't have this, or I don't have that, so I can't do this, then you're never going to be able to get to what you want. But if you're resourceful and you can figure out, well, hey, I know I don't have this 100K, I need to hire this person, but I know I could probably convince them to work on equity or something like that, right? And this 100K isn't the only way I can get this person. And the whole idea of talent, right?
Yeah. My brain just doesn't really think like that. So hearing you say that, it's just running a business, operating it. It's so much more than what it sounds like. It's puzzle pieces, and really just understanding. Almost you have to understand where you want things to be 10, 20 years before you're even at that point. Thinking further ahead than where you are.
I wouldn't say 10, 20 years, but I think it's definitely thinking further ahead, and trying to connect dots where people wouldn't be connecting dots before, right? And trying to find ways around things that conventionally, wouldn't work, right? Because if everyone knew how to do something, then everyone would be doing it. But the thing about successful entrepreneurs is that they're able to figure out, here's how I can get from point A to point B, that no one else is thinking about. It's almost like as Peter Thiel calls it, it's a secret, something that that nobody else knows, that'll kind of guide you to success.
Have you always felt this entrepreneurial sense in you, ever since you were a kid?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Give me an example of that, because I've always wondered, are people born this way? Are people born with this type of skill set, or is it actually learned? Because there's not many people out there like you.
Yeah, I think that it's a combination of both, right? Okay. So for example, if I think about my co-founder, right, he was more like his career trajectory when I met him was he wanted to be a professor, right? He was an academic, he was really, really good at math, and we kind of, between the two of us, sculpted him into an entrepreneur. Right, but where I started was I've always wanted to be this, right? I've always wanted to do this, and I figured, I'm not living if I'm not doing this, right? So I think an early example of that would be I had access to a computer really, really early on, right? So I would work on little apps and build little games, and it was something small, but it was something that really inspired me. So when I was doing that when I was 4 or 5. It was a jumping point onto the next thing, which I built a little e-commerce website, and then it was the next thing where I started doing apps and building apps, and then it was the next thing and the next thing, right? Which kind of all these building blocks of experience, became what I am today, and what I'll continue to be.
Yeah. Would you say that your entrepreneurial spirit attracted you to the world of finance, or would you say?
I would say a little bit.
Okay.
I would say that, finance is something that's always been important to entrepreneurs, right? You have to, raise money to grow a company and to scale.
Yeah.
You have to understand it, right? It's just something that's just always been there, that has stayed relatively the same for a long period of time, right? So it made sense as an industry to, be the next one to be disrupted, so to speak.
Yeah. Do you see yourself jumping in any other fields, or do you see maybe with the way technology is going, do you see the financial industry transforming in different ways?
Yeah, I mean, I see the financial industry transforming in different ways, and I see I see myself sticking towards, what I call human leverage technologies, but technologies that really make humans better, right? Okay. Whereas a lot of people believe, AI is going to be this whole next frontier where it's going to replace the majority of humans, whereas I believe, AI is going to empower humans, right? And whether there's this general intelligence, some Terminator-like figure that comes along and, takes over the world, it's to be unknown, but, I think for the next long period of time, right? AI is going to be something that empowers relationships and makes humans better so they can focus on what really matters, which is, growth and building relationships and, the interpersonal aspect of, why we're all humans and what technology really should be doing.
Wow. So at this point in your life, I mean, you kind of mentioned, you've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and you are this entrepreneur figure today. So what's driving you to your next goal, or what is your next set of goals?
Yeah, my next set of goals is just, when you're growing a company, right, you have more goals to hit to scale the company, right? So I think it's just continuing that pathway until, an end, right?
Right.
So it's really just building on our product, getting more users, iterating, talking to more users. It's relatively the same course.
Yeah.
But it'll help the company grow as a whole.
And this isn't your first company, correct?
It's not, no. So this is my first venture-backed startup,
okay,
right? Where we've raised a bunch of VC funding, we have a big team and an office and all kinds of things like that, right? But I've had other businesses in the past.
That's crazy.
And I think those experiences helped inform this experience.
Elaborate on that. And what would you say is the difference between having a VC-backed company versus whatever you had prior to this?
So I think the thing that really differentiated, and there's a lot of differentials between a startup and a lifestyle business, where the lifestyle business's goal is to really make a profit, and the startup business is to grow and make an impact in the world and return a really big multiple and solve a problem almost.
Okay.
Right? So the big differentiating factor is that, a lot of people were depending on me or are depending on me for the startup, right? And customers and investors and employees. And it's this organization, right? As to the lifestyle business was, when I was just building apps for people, it was, just my co-founder and I, building stuff out that we thought was cool and, selling it, right? It was us. Right, and our goal was just to make some money. Okay. But I think with a startup, it's a lot more than just making money.
Yeah, you're like you said, you're really trying to solve a critical need.
Exactly.
Versus, so what's your take on if that is the case? I've never really thought about startups in that way, but it makes sense. There's so many startups out there.
Right.
So what's supposed to happen to all of them?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think it's important for more startups and more entrepreneurs to come about, which is amazing that we're at this time where starting a company is cool, and it's it's interesting to be an entrepreneur. But I think that a lot of companies aren't solving problems that are critical to the world. Where there's a lot of really big problems that might not sound sexy and cool, but are going to solve a lot of hair on fire issues for the world that need to be gone after. And I think that as we start to grow, there's going to be more and more entrepreneurs that come in to help solve those problems. But right now, I'm seeing a lot of companies that are just solely existing to make money, which is not the best thing. But I think that we're improving as a whole, which is amazing.
When you're dealing with thinking about growing a company and hiring and going through all of those motions, how do you keep yourself sane? How do you not let yourself get overwhelmed through all of that?
Yeah, so burnout is a really interesting phenomenon. And I think it's so easy because millennials now have gotten into this whole idea of it's called the hustle mindset, where you're supposed to work and pretend like you're working all the time and you're always busy. And I don't really think that's a good thing. I think that there's two types of work. There's working hard and there's working smart. I think working smart is definitely very important, right? I think keeping a routine and a very regimented schedule is important, but also like, not pushing it. When you're tired, you quit working, right? Unless you really, really have to. But there's important things in life that I think a lot of people forget, right? Hanging out with your friends and going out and having fun and waking up on time and getting some exercise. Not spending too much time in front of a screen. That's important to keeping some balance, right? I've never really had a burnout issue, and it's because I've made sure to kind of live harmoniously, almost, as they call it.
So however many hours you're working, you'll go out and have some fun for that many hours.
Maybe not that many hours, but a reasonable amount. Yeah.
You'll try.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. So out of everything that we've talked about today, and maybe some other things that we haven't touched on, what in your years of life is the one thing that you're most proud of? Your proudest accomplishment? You've done so many cool things.
That is a good question. I think that my proudest accomplishment is really just getting together a really great group of people that believe in what we're doing, whether that be customers or investors or team members, and just building strong relationships with them where we've got a vision and we're pushing towards it. It's kind of a general idea, but collectively, I think that's the thing that I'm most proud of.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. To hear more, check out our website, badassesintech.com, and join our community. We're also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud, so follow us and tune in next week. That about sums it up. I'm Summer Falgiano, and this is Badasses in Tech.